In Job Interview Essentials, I focus on the most common type of job interview, a one-on-one conversation with someone in the hiring organization. Generally, you're talking to the hiring manager or human resources representative, but sometimes your first interview isn't with someone inside the organization. If the position is being filled by an outside staffing firm, your first step might be impressing a recruiter. A huge number of jobs are filled through third-party staffing agencies. Employers pay these firms to find and vet the best possible talent. Recruiting is a $14 billion industry, and about 55% of American companies use outside recruiters to find the right employees. Making a great impression with the recruiter takes a special approach. To discuss a winning strategy, I'm talking today with Jen Lin. Jen is a senior recruiter and account manager at Boly Welch, a premier recruitment and personnel consulting firm here in Portland, Oregon. Thanks for joining me, Jen.
Good morning, Mac.
Good morning. Now, before we jump into the interview discussion, let's clarify something for our viewers. A lot of people don't understand how recruiters work. Can you give us a quick synopsis of what you do and how you make your money?
That's a fair question. I like to think of myself as a professional matchmaker, not a romantic matchmaker. So basically what we do is we match applicants who are looking for jobs, job seekers, with opportunities, which are the jobs that our clients are wanting us to fill for them. So it's a pretty straightforward process. We're kind of the middle people to help make that match. Okay.
So a matchmaker, and you don't charge job seekers, do you, Jen?
That's correct. The fees are paid for entirely by the companies we work with. So we are working on behalf of both parties equally to make sure a good match and a long-term placement is ensured through that process.
Okay. But the employer is the person who's paying for the service. So you pay attention to their needs and what they're looking for, don't you?
That is correct. But I definitely want to stress, a lot of people are concerned that maybe it's not an equal process, but there'd be no way to make a great match unless we were equally concerned about, satisfying the candidate, the job seeker, as well as the client. Ultimately, the client is the one who is, paying the fee and also making the decision. But again, we're looking for a great long-term placement, so both parties have to be, equally satisfied to make that happen.
Okay. Now, Jen, how do you find candidates for the roles you need to fill? Should job seekers, for example, reach out to you?
Definitely. So we definitely place a lot of ads. We use Maxless, of course. We also use, Facebook and all of the social media sites to actually go out and get those job seekers. But we also, Boly Welch has been in business for 31 years, so we definitely get a lot of people who've used us before. We get a lot of referrals, but we absolutely love people, sending in their resume to us. All of our jobs are posted on our website, so that's a great way for people to see the types of things that we're working on and then reach out directly.
So you're advertising both on job boards and in other places as well, so using social media, and the candidate sees that listing, sends in a resume. Is there anything else they should do to follow up with you?
Once it's maybe different for different people, but typically when people send in their resume, it's routed to the right division within our organization. We have different areas of expertise, and then it's reviewed. And we always want to be very respectful of the candidate's time. It takes a lot of time to prepare a resume and a cover letter. So we're really only bringing in people who look like they would be a fit for the types of positions that we see, just to be very respectful of their time and energy. Okay. So once they send in their resume, we would reach out to them at that point and perhaps schedule a time to meet.
Okay. And so the next step is people hear from you if it's appropriate to continue the conversation. And is that generally a phone interview, Jen, or an in-person interview, or what happens next?
That's a great question. It varies a little bit between, recruiters, but typically there is an initial phone call just to, again, talk about the resume maybe a little bit more, or if there are some questions, just to kind of start the vetting process. But it always will result, if we are going to move forward with somebody, it will always result with an in-person interview. We would never move forward with somebody unless we'd actually had a chance to meet them in person.
Okay.
And that would typically include an application. When appropriate, we also have some skills assessments that are done. We talk about, the resume presentation and then move forward from there.
Okay. Now let's talk about that in-person meeting. Once you reach out to someone, you invite them to come to your office. Mm-hmm. And I want to take you through some of the tips that I know are true for employers who are doing hiring themselves, but I think they're also true for recruiters. So let's run down a list of essentials, Jen, and tell me if they apply to candidates when they're meeting with you or your colleagues. First on our list is arriving on time. Is that important?
That is very important. I would also say don't arrive too early. That could also, sometimes people think, it looks good to show up 20 minutes early or half an hour early. But then when you think about it, you're either sitting in the lobby staring at the receptionist, or the person you're meeting with has been alerted that you're here and maybe they're not prepared yet and, have a certain amount of time set up. So I would say no more than 5 or 10 minutes early would be appropriate.
Okay, how about professional dress? Does that matter in these meetings?
It absolutely does. I think sometimes people think, when they're meeting with a recruiter that it's not, sort of a real interview. So maybe they don't have to dress it up quite as much. But I would always say that basically the way you show up to the interview with us, that's how we would expect you would be going forward with your the interviews with our clients. So we would expect that you would be dressed professionally.
Next on our list of interview essentials is bringing a copy of your resume. Is that important in these conversations?
That would be important. I mean, of course, the resume has already been sent in at that point, so we do have a copy of it, but just showing that you're engaged and prepared is very helpful.
How about having prepared talking points or messages about what you have to offer as a candidate?
That is something that I think is overlooked quite a bit. A lot of times people come in and, if you're walking through their resume with them, they maybe are a little bit fuzzy on dates or, what they did there or why they left a certain position. So just knowing what's on your resume, being prepared to speak to that, being prepared to speak to what you're looking for, why you're there, why you're looking for a new job if you are employed, and if you're unemployed, maybe what you're looking for in your next job.
Next on our list, Jen, is showing enthusiasm. How do you react when you don't see enthusiasm?
That's a little troubling, and you always want to think, put yourself in their shoes. Maybe they're nervous, maybe they've been stuck in traffic, maybe their child is sick, or there could be a lot of reasons why maybe somebody doesn't appear to be at their best. But it does give you a little reason to wonder, again, how they present themselves to you is how you would expect they'd be presenting themselves to your client, to my clients. So definitely showing up with a positive attitude with some energy is very helpful.
Okay. And what about having thoughtful questions? Is that important?
That is definitely very, and again, it's a little bit different when you're working with a recruiter because you can't speak to a specific organization or a specific job necessarily, but a lot of people do ask questions about the process, or they show that they've looked at our company website and know a little bit about our company. So any research you can do ahead of time really just shows that you're ready to go, you're engaged, you're in it.
And last on our list is sending a thank you note. What are your thoughts about that, Jen?
That is something that I think has, unfortunately in modern times, has sort of gone away, but I would say that it means a great deal. It doesn't have to be stationary. It can be, just an email to say, I enjoyed meeting with you, I appreciate your time, any follow-up questions or updates. I think that can absolutely go a long way.
And do you find that many candidates don't bother to do that?
I would say the majority do not. So it always is a pleasant surprise to get, especially one in the mail, because you don't get a lot of things in the mail these days, it seems like. So I always recommend, when our candidates go out on interviews to also do that. If they've been given a card, they could certainly just send an email. That's a really fast way to get your message across. But a card is also nice as well. So.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about shift gears and talk about the role of personality and culture fit. Is this something that you look for when you sit down and have these in-person meetings, these interviews with potential candidates for jobs through your agency?
Absolutely. That's a huge piece of the process, I would say, is the personality fit and the culture fit. A lot of things can be learned on the job or trained, but you can't train somebody, to have the right personality fit for a team or an organization. So, and a lot of people think, oh, I can work anywhere, I'm flexible, but, that really isn't the case. And people need to find an organization or find a place where their values align with that of the organization, and where it's a place that they look forward to heading into every morning. So really getting to know the relationship we build with our clients as well as the job seeker is crucial as far as making placements that are going to be successful.
You mentioned looking for organizations that reflect your values if you're a candidate. Any other tips, Jen, about how to show or explore culture fit when somebody sits down and talks with you or one of your colleagues?
Definitely. And when you talk about, values aligning, it doesn't mean it has to be a nonprofit. A lot of people, I think, hear values and they think, oh, well, I don't want to work in a nonprofit. But a lot of for-profit organizations definitely still have a mission statement or something that a job seeker would want to be able to get behind. So that definitely is something that we want to explore and just figure out what those points are they're looking for. Is it just a salary? Is it just the next job to fill that gap? Or is it really a place where they want to put roots down and grow? And so I think really, figuring out what makes somebody tick, what energizes them, is really critical to being able to move forward.
Yeah. Now, in our course here at Maximus, we teach people that they should research the hiring organization before an interview so that they can understand an employer's problems and position themselves as problem solvers. When the job is being filled by a recruiter, often the name of the clients you're working with is confidential and by your client's choice. In this situation, how do you recommend candidates prepare and do that kind of research or homework?
That is a great question. So when we're setting somebody up for an interview, if it is confidential, sometimes the first interview, it will still be confidential. So at that point, we would just have told the person something about the industry. You can be very vague and still get a lot of information across. So you can talk about it's this type of industry, it's this department or division. This is the type of person they're looking for. This is what didn't work with their last person. So not knowing the specific name of the company at that point, we've done all the legwork at that point so we can fill in the gaps. So there's a lot of trust at that point that does go into, the job seeker giving a lot of trust to the recruiter to make sure that they are representing them and have their best interests in heart to get them in front of the right type of organization. So thankfully, it's not usually confidential for too long. There definitely is a point where that trust has been established where we would be able to tell the job seeker the name of the company so they could do some research on their own. But we would really be telling them almost as much as they would be able to figure out on their own. So.
Right. And you're not sending someone to an address in an anonymous industrial district for work. They're actually knowing where they're going to go to work before they accept the offer. Yeah.
Right. Oh, gosh, definitely. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, great.
It's always very clear. I mean, we never want there to be any surprises or that doesn't, do anybody any favors. So.
Yeah. Well, what's the best way for people to follow up with you and other recruiters after that meeting, after that first interview?
And that's very important. In this day and age, we're so fortunate with, electronic communication and cell phones and texting. So we really encourage our candidates to get a hold of us immediately after the interview, especially in this market in Portland. It's so competitive right now. Things are moving really quickly. So, if we don't hear back from somebody to be able to gauge their interest in moving forward, there's the potential they could lose out on that opportunity. If we don't feel like they're really engaged or excited about it. So even if it's not a position that they want to move forward with, just knowing that, having that immediate communication is really critical. Many people are working candidates, when they're looking for another job. So maybe they're, rushing back to their job. They've had to take a long lunch or something like that. So, we'll communicate in many different ways. We text with candidates, emails are great, quick phone calls, whatever works.
And you mentioned at the start of our conversation, Jen, that some of the people you work with, you've worked with for years. How do you see people build long-term relationships with recruiters like you?
Just very clear communication. So once we place somebody in a job, we don't go after them. We would never try to, poach somebody we've placed. But we definitely encourage people to keep in touch with us as their career grows. So people will maybe start in one position and move up a little bit and be ready to move on to the next position. A lot of times we'll place people in HR positions, so then they're in the position where they're hiring people, so we keep that relationship with them. But we have, since we have been in business for so long, we're also at the point where we're placing people's grandchildren. So we have a lot of really great long-term connections, and people trust us. If we've placed them in a really positive place that they've had a great experience, then they'll come back to us, and so that does happen again and again.
Yeah, that must be very gratifying to work with up to 3 generations of one family. Yeah,
it's very satisfying. Yes.
Yeah, congratulations. Is there one thing you recommend people never do when interviewing or working with a recruiter, Jen?
Definitely, as far as working with a recruiter, don't think of us as, the hiring manager that you're interviewing with. We really are the person that you need to be completely honest with. So think of it even as like somebody you would confess to. So we want to know the good, bad, and the ugly. If you were let go from your last job, don't tell us you were laid off. If you really didn't like your last boss and you want to tell us the reasons why, that's really helpful, because then we won't place you in another position where maybe there's the same scenario. Also, the being candid, being honest is really critical, because Portland is a very small town, and it will come out if you maybe left on poor terms, or if you, different things like that. So just being really upfront and honest. It's always better to be on the offensive than the defensive, just to be able to attack things head on. And also, when you're honest, the recruiter can sort of help you put a spin, if you will, maybe on what happened, if there was a sticky, situation, not in a way that's deceptive, because again, we want to be very truthful with our clients as well, but presenting the experience in a way that is maybe positive, saying, this didn't end on a great note, but this is what I learned from it, and this is how I'm going to move forward. Or there could be emotional reasons, if there was maybe a tragedy, or, where somebody had to leave a position or move or something like that. So talking about it, so then maybe you're not, tearful in an interview. So just all of those things, I think, can just present somebody to be successful in going forward.
I'm glad you brought up those last points, because I could imagine some people thinking, gosh, I don't want to share that I was fired, because that will harm me. A recruiter won't want to work with me. But I'm hearing you say something exactly the opposite.
It's true. It's just a fact of life sometimes, and especially in a state like Oregon, where you can be let go without a reason. So sometimes, maybe it just was not a good fit, which we understand. I mean, our motto is fit matters most. So there are times when, due to, just factors that couldn't have been prevented, it's just not a good fit. So being able to, again, just present that experience and situation in a way that looks positive, again, not being deceitful or trying to cover things up or smoke and mirrors, but just keeping it as positive as possible.
Okay. Well, I'd like to close by asking, what's the one thing a candidate can do to stand out in a great way, Jen? What do you see people do?
I would probably say the communication piece is huge. So just being available, a lot of times it's, hard to connect with people. So then it really makes you wonder, how committed are they to this process? How committed are they to moving forward and finding a new job? And again, with electronic communication, it's not difficult to connect with people, even if it is a quick email or a quick phone call or even a text. So being very responsive, having prompt, thorough, clear communication, professional communication, those are probably the big things that would make somebody really stand out and really make for a successful partnership, because we want to be the advocate. That's, the biggest joy that we get, is really being an advocate to help somebody find a great home in their next job.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jen. Thanks for joining us today. And you can learn more about Jen's organization. It's Boly Welch. Visit bolywelch.com. They're always recruiting for new positions here in Oregon. They also have a great blog with information for job seekers and employers that is valuable no matter where you live. And again, you can find out more by visiting bolywelch.com. Jen, thanks for joining us today and sharing your expertise. And thank you, our viewers, for watching.
Thank you.